And she starts coming towards me. She said, "Give me money or I kill you." So I thought, I need to try and grab the knife. And she just went like this. She stabbed the knife towards me. She was a street girl. She was a gangster, and she's probably been in these situations before. This is legitimately the most terrifying incident that I've ever been exposed to in Cambodia, and it's one of the scariest incidents that's ever happened to me in my life.
What's the story, everybody? Pete here from Thairish Times. We got another one for you today. So I interviewed Richard about a month ago, and I got lots of messages saying, let's get Richard back on. We love his stories, want to hear more about his travel adventures. So I asked Richard, you come back on? He said, yeah. So here we are, we're doing it again. So in this video, Richard is going to tell 3 stories, right? He's traveled extensively through Southeast Asia. He spent a lot of time in Cambodia, years in Cambodia. He's also traveled through Thailand as well. And he's going to talk about 3 travel stories based in Cambodia. But really, they're related to Thailand. I think the same kind of thing could happen in Thailand as well. So the first one is how he woke up to a crazy woman in his room with a knife. It's not something you want to wake up to. Not at all. The second one is then his friend was beaten up by Tuk Tuk drivers, a group of Tuk Tuk drivers, and how Richard had to save him from a serious beating. And then the last one then is the most insulting thing he's ever said to a Khmer person after he was scammed. Right, so we're going to get into those stories today. He's written a book as well, okay, filled with hysterical stories. Some you're about to hear, and then there's dozens more in the book that we haven't covered. So I'll leave a link for the book down below. It's available on Amazon. I'll pin it down below in the comment section. Right, folks, let's get straight into it. Hope you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, leave me a comment. If you don't enjoy them, leave me a comment anyway, regardless. Let's get into the video. Cheers. Boom. Recording is on.
Okay,
so
sorry,
Richard, thanks for coming on again, right?
Sorry. I was deleting the okay at the top because it was cutting off my face. I'm one of these people. I don't look at you during the interview. I like to look at myself. It's no reflection on your beauty. If I focus on myself, it's like I'm speaking in the mirror.
Yeah, exactly. You keep looking at yourself there. You keep admiring yourself there, and I'll carry on with the intro.
All right.
Right. Well, thanks for coming on again. Right. The first 2 videos, they loved you, Richard. You're a star. You know, they really like the stories, right? And so that's why you're back on again, right? We're gonna get into we have 6 new stories of your travel adventures, right? And you sent an email to me with the 6 topics on the email, and we're gonna get into that now. So the first one is a crazy woman threatened to stab you with a fork in Cambodia. Give us the background for that one. You know, what year was it? And give as much detail as you can, and then take it away.
Okay, out of all the stories that I've got based in Cambodia, this is my favorite story because it encompasses everything that I love about Cambodia. You've got intrigue, you've got danger, you've got entertainment, and just unpredictability. So we'll get right into the story. This story takes place in 2013. We're going all the way back over 10 years ago. 2013, Phnom Penh, Cambodia. I was out drinking with my friends. It was a Friday night. I was on the beers, and then I switched up to the Jack and Coke just to make sure I was nice and monkeyed. My friends went home about 12 o'clock because they had work the next day, but I also had work, but I was an alcoholic at that point. So responsibilities is a foreign word to me. So I continued going out, and I went to a couple of bars, and then I went to a nightclub called Hearts of Darkness. That's one of the biggest and most famous nightclubs in Phnom Penh. Now, as I'm walking towards Hearts of Darkness, I start to stumble. And that's my body's way of telling my brain, right, it's time to go home. So I thought, there's nothing to be achieved by staying out. I'm just going to get even drunker and then be twice as hungover tomorrow. So it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. So I said, right, I'll be sensible and go home at a semi-sensible time. So I'm walking towards a Tuk Tuk, and there was a girl, her name was Leek, like the vegetable, 25 years old, very attractive. And I started speaking to her. And what she told me was she's from Battambang, which is a province in the west of Cambodia. She was here with her friends, but her friends went away home. And she said, I need a place to stay tonight. Now, initially, when I was speaking to her, I thought she was a prostitute. I thought she was looking for business. And I was drunk. I said, listen, I'm just going home. And she said, no, you don't have to pay me money. And I sort of looked at her and I thought to myself, she doesn't want money. She's telling me she wants a place to sleep tonight. So I said to her, right, you can come back to mine and sleep. And then in the morning, you can leave. So we both jumped in a tuk tuk together. We'll go back to my apartment on Street 144, which is where I lived for several years. We get into the apartment. I locked the door, and I didn't really know this girl Leek. So I thought maybe she might try and rob me. So I hid my house keys, which was a contingency measure should she wake up early in the morning and try and escape with my TV and all my porn collection. So I've hidden the keys. And then we've jumped in bed together. Must have been about 2:30, maybe 3 o'clock. And we jumped in bed together. Nothing happened. I just passed out because when I get really drunk, I could be next to Angelina Jolie.
Nothing happened at all.
Nothing. I passed
You're
out.
saying you're in bed with a woman drunk out of your mind.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened. Passed out immediately. That's my party trick. I can pass out anywhere. So I fell asleep, but before I fell asleep, I remember looking at Leek and thinking to myself, I can't wait to wake up in the morning because I'm the knight in shining armor. She's very attractive. She'll possibly be very grateful that I've allowed her to sleep at my place. So I fell asleep, and then I woke up 3 hours later. It's about 6:30 in the morning. Leek has woken up. She's now fully dressed, and she's screaming in my face, wake up, I want to go home. Wake up, I want to go home. And I've just woken up, 3 hours sleep off of a drinking bender. So I'm half drunk, hangover's kicking in. I'm completely confused as to what's going on. And she's screaming at me, wake up, I want to go home. Wake up, I want to go home. So I thought, okay, fair enough. There's not going to be any slap and tickle with her. She wants to go home. So I've got up and I turned on the bedroom light because it was starting to get light outside, but the drapes are drawn, so my bedroom's kind of dark. I turned on the light and I looked at Leek, and the woman that I met last night was not the woman that was in my bedroom. She looked completely different. She looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. She had bad skin, squint teeth. I think she was like cockeyed. And I was just like, oh my God, I was so drunk last night. So I've started pulling on my clothes, and she's like, hurry up, I want to go home. Hurry up, I want to go home. So I pulled on my shorts, and then she said, hurry up, pay me $20, I go home. And I'm like, what? And she said, pay me $20, I want to go home. And I said, what am I paying you $20 for? And she said, I stayed with you last night, you pay me $20. And I said, nothing happened. You needed a place to stay. I allowed you to stay in my apartment. You should be paying me $20. And she said, I stayed with you last night. You give me $20. This is going back and forth for about 10 minutes. I'm hungover. I'm sweating. Gollum from Lord of the Rings is demanding money. And I just said to her, nothing happened last night. I'm not giving you money. So she must have realized that wouldn't shift on allocating her money. So she went storming out the bedroom and towards my front door. Now, next to my front door is my kitchen area. So I'm still in the bedroom. I pulled on my t-shirt. She's in the kitchen. All of a sudden, pots and pans are getting thrown about in the kitchen. She's rearranging my kitchen. Plates are getting smashed. And I'm like, oh my God, what is she doing? Then there was silence. And I can hear her feet slapping on the tiled floor as she comes back into the bedroom. And I'm thinking, oh, what's going to happen now? She comes into the bedroom. She's got a fork in her left hand and my 12-inch long razor sharp kitchen knife in her right hand, fork, knife. And she walked right up to me and I'm like, oh my God, why am I dealing with this? And she stops in front of me and she said, give me $20 or I kill you to death. And I looked at her, I said, what are you doing? I said, put down the fork, put down the knife and just get out. And she starts coming towards me. She said, give me money or I kill you. And she's like waving the fork in my face. And I'm hungover, I'm sweating. And I'm like, why am I dealing with this? Why has my life come to this? And I said to her, listen, you're not getting the money, put down the fork and knife. Give me $20, I kill you. And this is going back and forth for like 10 minutes. I'm hungover, I'm sweating, I'm contending with this ridiculous situation. And I thought to myself, I need to physically get that fork and knife out of her hand. She's not going to back down. She's made it clear this is armed robbery with a fork. She wants money. I'm not going to be intimidated. So I just thought to myself, I need to get the knife. At the very least, I need to get the knife. She's not going to kill me with a fork. It's impossible to kill someone with a fork. So I thought I need to try and grab the knife. And while I'm speaking to her, my hand shot forward and I attempted to grab the knife. And she just went like this. She stabbed the knife towards me. And the only reason she missed was because she had short, stubby arms. So she stopped like maybe that much away from stabbing me. And I just stepped back and I looked at her and I understood what leak was. She was a street girl. She was a gangster and she's probably been in these situations before. And I was terrified because if she accidentally on purpose stabbed me, who are the police going to believe? She's come here. The police don't speak any English. I'm in big trouble. So I can't afford to allow myself to get stabbed. So I said to her, you wait here 2 seconds. I said, I'll go and get the money. So I left her in the bedroom. I went through the living room and I thought to myself, I've got two options. I pay her $20 or I get a weapon and fight fire with fire. So I'm looking around my living room. There's the TV, like maybe I can bash her with the TV. I've got the coffee table. Maybe I can use that as a weapon. And I looked over and I seen a chair. I've got this like great big imperial wooden chair that weighs a ton. And I thought that'll do nicely. So I've walked over, I've grabbed the chair by the back and I've lifted it above my head. This thing weighed an absolute ton, but it looked intimidating. And I thought that's my weapon of choice. So I went walking through the bedroom, this huge chair like this, like walking like Frankenstein. And I get into the bedroom and it looks like this. And I just stood above her with a chair and I said, listen to me very carefully. I don't want to do this, but I will bash you over the head with this chair if you don't put down that fork and knife. I thought she would back down. She didn't back down. She said, you drop the chair, give me $20 right now. And I said to her, look at the size of this chair. I'm going to reduce you to a puddle. I said, put down the fork and knife. No, you drop the chair, give me $20. And we're going back and forth. And this was like 7 in the morning now. It was like a 45-minute ordeal. And I'm holding this chair above my head and my arms are shaking because it's so heavy. And I thought to myself, she's not going to back down. Like, what do I need? A plasma rifle? Do I need a chainsaw? So I thought, what I need to do is I need to show her that I mean business. I went rushing towards her and I pretended to hit her with a chair. I brought it down quickly and just stopped it just before her head. And she understood at that point that she was potentially going to get a very bad wooden splinter in her forehead. So she dropped a fork and knife. And I've just grabbed her, I've thrown down the chair, I've grabbed her, picked her up off her feet, and just escorted her out of my apartment.
Never had to give her any money.
No, no, no. She had essentially tricked me. She told me I need a place to sleep. She knew I was drunk. Then we went back to my place. Then in the morning, she's wanting me to pay her $20. Nothing happened, and I let her sleep in my apartment. It was armed robbery. But it's one of those crazy incidents. If that happened now, I would pay her the $20. But back
Yeah, I
then, it
mean,
was a little bit
Richard,
hot-headed.
it's like for you said it's a 45-minute ordeal. That was a lot of stress just for 20 quid.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
it was
Just
it was
there you go.
crazy.
Get out of
It was.
here.
I looking back on it, maybe I should have paid her straight away, but then I wouldn't have this funny story. So I'm glad I endured that. But I never seen her again, thankfully. But every time I looked at that chair in my living room, I would get fond memories of my encounter with Leek.
That kind of reminds me of a story that I heard in Thailand from the guy it
Yeah,
happened to. So I worked with this guy, and he was an American from Florida, and he was don't know his background, but he was very kind of like he was very like some sort of Christian hardcore kind of religion. Anyway, so that was his background, and he was over in Thailand, and he was kind of like he had this new lease of life. He was away from his family,
yeah,
and he didn't have like he wasn't going to church every Sunday type of thing. And he told me that he went out one night and he woke up uh, and he was in the bed. He woke up at Cowsand Road it was, and he was looking down the bed. He was in the bed, and he could see there was a body beside him in the bed. And he looked down the bed, and he
Yeah.
could see two big, large feet, right? And he said, "Those aren't women's feet." And then he looked to the side, like, 'cause the person had was turned away, so you could only see hair. And he kind of looked over, and you could just see like a brow, like a man's
The
brow, and
monobrow.
yeah, the monobrow. And he said, that's not a woman's brow." He gets out of bed and he puts his clothes on. He realizes, like, I think this is a ladyboy. I don't know, what have I done? And just as he says that, the ladyboy wakes up, rises out of bed. And this guy was tall. He was about 6 foot, but he said this
Yeah,
ladyboy rose out of bed was 6 foot, bloody 2 or 3.
that's a big lady boy. That's
Boom,
a big
right in
problem.
front of him. Give me the money. And he was just like, what? Like, give you what? She said, 2,000 baht. And then this is this guy's mistake. He didn't want to pay. You're in a stressful situation. You got this big ladyboy towering over, and you're ready to fight. Like, look like
Yeah,
a proper geezer. And he ended up not paying and having a big argument in the room, like similar to what you were saying. Fists were, punches were thrown and everything. And then he ran away and ran down the road, and he got away. And but then this is the crazy part. 6 months later, or a year, or 8 months later, this guy was on a date in Khao Road, and he was
yeah,
in a restaurant with this girl. They were having drinks. Everything was going well, and he looks up, and in the corner of the bar, he sees the same ladyboy, and the ladyboy's looking right at him, and he's like,
yeah.
"Oh
Where's my money? Where's my
yeah,
money?
oh shit, there she is again." And he just got up, said, "I'm going to the toilet," and he just left, and he walked out of the restaurant and never went back. He was so scared.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's a formidable lady boy then.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to your story. I mean, yeah, I mean, look, it's a stressful situation. For 20 quid, I'd just throw it like, there's 20 quid,
You
get
would
the
have
hell
just
out of
paid,
here.
yeah.
I'd have paid straight up, yeah, 20 quid, yeah.
I think what aggravated me was the fact that Leek pushed it into attempted armed robbery. You know what I mean? That's what just got my back up. And I just thought, right, I'm putting my foot down. A man's house is his castle. She's not robbing me with cutlery.
Yeah, but like you said there, you're in Cambodia. She's the local there. You're the foreigner, and you don't speak the language. The cops don't speak Khmer, or sorry, the cops don't speak English. So you know what I mean? It's dodgy.
Yeah, that's true. You've got to be careful. But I seen an avenue of escape and I took it. I'm just, truth be told, I'm just cheap. $20 to
I
me
was
is a
waiting
lot
for you
of
to say
money.
that. I was
And I
waiting to
didn't want,
see.
I'm not giving you $20 so I can sleep next to you.
I was waiting for you to say that. All
It's the
right.
cheapness that dictates my actions.
All right. The next one then, right? You got your mate was beaten up by tuk tuk drivers, and you were there, and it was kind of a scary incident.
Yeah, so this story, this is legitimately the most terrifying incident that I've ever been exposed to in Cambodia. And it's one of the scariest incidents that's ever happened to me in my life. But the story carries a message, and that message is if you're traveling in a foreign country, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, always be respectful to the locals. And that's what happened here was a local person was disrespected. And unfortunately, my friend paid the price. So this story takes place in 2018. It's one of my more recent stories. This was just coming to the end of my heavy drinking days. This might have been the catalyst for me to stop drinking so much. But I had a friend called Ben. He was like a friend of a friend, and we started drinking together. And I liked him. He was a cool guy. He was about 30 years old from New York. I had been out, not with Ben, I was out with another group of friends, and it was about maybe 11 o'clock at night. It was a Saturday night. So I came back to my apartment on Street 144. I'm ready to go to bed. And I looked over, I seen Ben drinking by himself. He was outside this bar drinking whiskey. So I went over, hey, how you doing? What you up to? He just broke up with his girlfriend. So he's drowning his sorrows by drinking whiskey. So I sat down with him and we started drinking whiskey together. We're having a good time. And then at 12 o'clock, we're both very drunk, wasted, in fact. And he said to me, do you want to go to a girly bar? And I said, that's a fantastic idea because nothing bad ever happens at a girly bar. So we went to this girly bar. It was a few streets over from Street 144. We're walking at the girly bar. There's no other customers. Me and Ben are literally the only people in this bar. There's the cashier behind the counter. She was very attractive. Then there's two bar girls who are in front of the bar. So Ben's immediately set his sights on the cashier and he's chatting her up. They're laughing and joking together. And it looked like he was in there. I'm speaking away to the two bar girls. I bought them a girly drink each and they gave me a back massage in return. Now, when I get drunk, I can sleep literally anywhere. And my friends back in Scotland, they call me day walker because when I'm drunk, I just fall asleep like that. So these two girls are giving me the massage and I'm just like this. I start falling asleep. I rest my head on the counter of the bar and I start drifting off. Before I fell asleep, Ben and the cashier, they're laughing and joking. There's positive vibes in the air. Then I fell asleep. I woke up 10 minutes later. The atmosphere was completely different. The two girls that gave me the back massage, they're gone. It's me, Ben, and the cashier. Ben and the cashier are shouting and screaming at each other, pointing fingers, and they're speaking in French obscurely. I don't speak French, but they're going back and forth in French, pointing fingers. And I can tell by the look on Ben's face that he was angry and the cashier was angry as well. And I'm just watching this thinking, what is going on? All of a sudden, the cashier, she gets so infuriated, she walks out from behind the counter and she left her own bar. She walked out of her own bar. So there's only me and Ben left. So I walked up to Ben. I was like, what's going on there? And he said something along the lines of, she insulted me, so I insulted her back. And I'm like, okay, but I said, we need to pay our bills and just leave. And then I start to think to myself, what was the girl doing outside? She left her own bar, me and Ben alone, and she just went outside. What's she doing outside? 2 minutes later, she comes in. She said to me and Ben, you and you pay your bill, get out right now. So we paid the bill. Me and Ben start walking towards the front door of the bar. And I start to think to myself, what was that girl doing outside? It was just strange that somebody would leave their own bar. We get outside the bar and I understood what she did. Outside the bar, there's 20 tuk-tuk drivers in a semicircle. They've completely surrounded the bar. And me and Ben just froze. And I'm like this. The cashier had went outside, told her friends what had happened. Ben insulted her. So they were waiting for us. And I knew what was going to happen. Ben was going to get a hiding and I would probably get a hiding as well. I didn't do anything. I was sleeping, but I'm guilty through association. And I look over at Ben and he turned whiter than this vest. The color was out of his face and he understood that he made a mistake. And I'm stood there and I knew that we couldn't just linger there. We were sitting ducks. And I said to Ben, we need to get out of here right now. We need to power through the tuk-tuk drivers and just get out of here. And he said, okay, we start walking towards the tuk-tuk drivers. And my heart's going like this. I'm just waiting for something to happen because these tuk-tuk drivers looked infuriated. And we get up close and personal with the tuk-tuk drivers. And then they start moving out of the way. And I thought to myself, they're not going to do anything. They just wanted to try and intimidate us. We're safe. We start walking through the tuk-tuk drivers. And all of a sudden, one of the tuk-tuk drivers jumped forwards and in his hand, there was an object like that. It was either a wooden club or a metal bit of construction piping, but it happened so quickly. He just ran over and he went bang, and he hit Ben over the head with it. And Ben's covered up. Then he hit Ben again, and Ben went down to his knees, curled up like that. And the guy just continued beating Ben. And I'm stood there watching this, and I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. My brain couldn't compute it because it was such a violent attack. And I'm stood there frozen with fear. My first instinct was to run away. I feel like a coward admitting that, but it's human nature. You want to protect yourself. I wanted to run away. But I'm stood there watching Ben and all the other tuk-tuk drivers surrounded him. Bang, bang. He's just getting hit over and over and over. And I snapped out of my shock state and I thought to myself, I need to rescue Ben. I need to try and rescue Ben. So I'm trying to wade into the tuk-tuk drivers to push them out of the way to get to Ben. I don't know what I was going to do, but I had to try something. And the tuk-tuk drivers, there was 20 of them. They just pushed me out of the way. And I'm on the outside, the attacks continuing on Ben. And I'm looking around. I'm like, what can I do? What can I do in this situation? And I look over at the bar, and there was the cashier that got insulted by Ben. And she was stood there with her arms crossed, watching this retribution being played out for her enjoyment. And I knew what I had to do. I ran over to her, pulled out my wallet, and I pulled out $40. And I just spoke to her in Khmer. I said, please stop. My friend's drunk. Please stop. Please stop. Here's some money. And she took the money, she looked at it, and then she shouted over to the tuk tuk drivers to stop beating up Ben. And I ran over and I picked him up. He was covered in cuts. He had like several cuts at the top of his head, and blood was streaming down his face. He looked like Hellboy, not exaggerating, covered in blood. And I've got him up to his feet, and we went running away. He didn't have a clue what happened. He kept saying to me, what happened? What happened? Oh my God, what happened? And I'm like, you got beaten up. Who beat me up? Who beat me up? And his face was white and he was clearly concussed. So I said to him, right, we need to get you to hospital. So we make our way back to Street 144. I know the tuk tuk drivers in Street 144, but the problem was it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. All the tuk tuk drivers are either asleep or away home. So I walk up to this tuk tuk driver. Ben was sitting on the side of the street. I walk over to this tuk tuk driver. I wake him up. I was able to articulate what happened in Khmer. I said, please take me, my friend, to the hospital. And he said, your friend's going already. And I said, what do you mean? He said, your friend's gone. And I turned around and Ben just ran away. He's way off in the distance, don't have a clue where he was going. So I went running after him. He's leaving a trail of blood on the ground. I'm chasing after him and he's running and running and running. He took a right down the street and he disappeared. I didn't have Ben's phone number. He wasn't my friend on Facebook. He was just somebody that I went drinking with, and I didn't know where he lived. So what could I do? He's gone. So I've went home and I'm mentally exhausted from the whole thing. I didn't get beaten up, but I felt like I'd been mentally eviscerated. So I went home and I passed out. I woke up 11:30 and my phone's ringing nonstop. Pick up the phone. There's about 150 missed calls from a mutual friend of Ben and I's called Jack. So I picked up the phone. I'm like, hey, buddy, how's it going? And he goes, I'm at the hospital with Ben. What had happened was Ben ran home, went to bed, fell asleep, blood pouring out of his head. When he woke up in the morning, his pillow's bright red with blood, and he didn't know what happened. Because he had a concussion, he didn't remember that he got beat up. So he phoned up Jack about maybe 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. Jack came and picked him up and took him to the hospital. And they'd been there for about 3 or 4 hours. So I'm speaking to Jack, and Jack said to me, oh, Ben's asking if you and him had a falling out last night. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, Ben said he was drinking with you and he woke up covered in blood. So he's wondering if you and him had a falling out. Ben was so concussed, he thought I beat him up. And I said, it wasn't me that beat him up. I said, it was the tuk-tuk drivers. So I explained the entire story to Jack, and he said, you know something, that makes more sense. So Ben was okay, but he ended up getting a huge bandage on his head. He looked like the Elephant Man, and he returned the $40 that I had used to bribe the girl or to try and placate the girl so she didn't beat up Ben anymore. In hindsight, I should have told him it was $200.
What did he say to the bar lady?
He doesn't remember to this day. He doesn't remember because when I finally seen him, I seen him that day and I said, what did you say to the bartender? And he said, I don't even remember going into the bar. He said, I don't have a clue. It might have been a strong insult. It might have been something mild. It might have been a misunderstanding. But what had happened, it was savage. But when you're traveling in Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, street justice is served up in different ways. For the tuk-tuk drivers, that was their way of preventing further insults thrown at one of their friends. And that was their way of dealing with it. But I personally thought it was particularly savage. And like I say, to this day, I've never seen anything like that again. And I never seen anything like that before it happened. It was very, very brutal.
Yeah, don't mess around with the Tuk Tuk mafia. When I was in
Yeah.
Phuket, my first couple of months in Thailand, I was with this guy, and he it was in Patong, and he put his head into the window of the tuk tuk and asked the guy, how much is it to get to X? And the guy said, 1,000 baht or whatever. And my mate goes like, what, 1,000 baht? That's disgraceful. And he put his hand in through the window and punched the roof or the ceiling of the tuk tuk.
Oh no.
And within seconds there was 6 or 7 guys surrounding him. And then it was a couple of us, maybe 2 or 3 of us. I kind of stepped in then because it was a little bit of a melee. And it only happened for about 10, 15 seconds. I stepped in,
Yeah.
pulled one guy away, and then they're all finished. There was a scuffle. And we were walking away real fast up Bangla Road. And then my mate looked and he had been stabbed in the arm.
Oh my God.
There was a knife wound in his arm.
Yeah, you got to be careful. I've actually got another story, and this involves me being assaulted. And I made a big mistake. This was back in 2014. And I'm sure after I tell this story, you're going to say the same thing. You got what you deserved. And I know I got what I deserved. And it taught me a very valuable lesson. So this is back in 2014. I was out drinking with my friends. You can always see a pattern to my story. They always
I was going to
involve
say
getting
that.
too
Those are my
drunk.
questions.
If I'm not drunk, the story's no good. Let's face it. So it's 2014. I was drinking on the Riverside area, and it was only about 8 o'clock at night. I'd had like maybe 4 or 5 beers, and my mates were at an area called Wat Lanka. Wat Lanka is about maybe 1 kilometer from Street 144 to the Wat Lanka area. So I decided, right, I'll jump in a tuk tuk. It's a $1 journey. You go right to the top of the road, you turn left, and you go towards Wat Lanka. So I jump in the back of this tuk tuk and I tell the driver in Khmer, whenever I get in a tuk tuk, I speak in Khmer, Kinyom Tau Wat Lanka. So there's no misunderstanding. That means I go to Wat Lanka. And the guy said, Moi dollar, costs $1. He drives up to the top of the road. Instead of going left, he goes right. And I'm saying to the guy, you're going the wrong way. I know where. He's going right, he goes left, and then he takes another right. He's continuing to drive away from Bat Lanka. This went on for a few minutes. I'm screaming at the guy, you're going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way. I know where. And he's not stopping for lights or anything. He just keeps driving in the opposite direction. Then I pinged on to what he was doing. He was getting me lost on purpose to increase the fare. I'd heard about this happening before. It was the first time it ever happened to me. So he's driving. Eventually, the tuk-tuk driver stopped, and I was in an area, Phnom Penh, didn't have a clue. To this day, I don't know where I was. And I jumped out the tuk-tuk, and I said to him, I wanted to go to Wat Lanka. I said, this is not Wat Lanka. And the guy went, give me $5. And I said, what am I giving you $5 for? You've not taken me to where I wanted to go. You've taken me to an area where I'm lost, and you want $5. So we're going back and forth. And the guy was holding his motorbike helmet at this point. He had like an extra helmet, and he's holding it by his side. And we're arguing back and forth. He wants $5. I'm not paying him $5. Some local tuk-tuk drivers, they were watching this altercation, and they walked over. There was maybe 10 of them, and they started to slowly surround us. They were just watching what was going on. Me and the guys going back and forth, back and forth. He's wanting money. I'm not paying him money. And I am furious with the guy because he'd done it on purpose. He'd done it on purpose. It was blatantly obvious what he was doing. And he said, give me $5. And I said, you want money? I went into my pocket. I pulled out money, and I did the most insulting thing I've ever done to a Khmer person in my life. And I know that I shouldn't have done this, but I was angry and the guy got me lost. I took the money and I threw it at the driver. As soon as the money left my hand, it's going in slow motion. I wish I could have caught it. And it just went through the air. It bounced off his chest and it hit the ground. I'm sure it's the same in Thailand. You cannot throw money at local people because you're implying that you're above them and they can pick the money off the ground. I shouldn't have done it. It was such a stupid thing to do, but I was angry and I was a little bit drunk. So the guy looked down at the money, he looked at the helmet in his hand, and he went running towards me and he just swung it. Now, I probably could have ducked out the way. I could have backed up a little bit, but I had to take the punishment because I insulted this guy. and he banged me right up the side of the head with this motorbike helmet. I was like that, like little birdies going around my head. And I took a few steps back, and the guy raised the helmet like he was going to do it again. And I sort of put myself in a fighting stance to let him know, right, I gave you one hit. If it happens again, I'll retaliate. All of a sudden, I became aware of my surroundings. I'm surrounded by tuk tuk drivers, and I just insulted a tuk tuk driver. This tuk tuk driver steps forward, huge guy, maybe 6'5", biggest Khmer I've ever seen in my life. And he pointed to the money and he said, pick that money up right now. Had to pick it up, had to bend down after getting walloped with a motorbike helmet, had to bend down, pick up the money. And he said, give it to the driver. He said, hand it to him. Had to hand it to him. I had to eat humble pie. I had to compromise my dignity because I had, in fact, insulted this guy. So I handed over the money. And then the guy said to me, he said, don't you come back here. And I'm like, I don't know where I am. I couldn't find my way back here with a map. So I went scurrying away with this like big lump coming up on my forehead, up in the side of my head. But I deserved that. Even though the guy got me lost, I should have paid the guy and just walked away. I shouldn't have insulted the guy. And I've never done that again. And it was a serious mistake. And I'm sure many people will say, oh, you got what you deserved. No kidding, I got what I deserved. I shouldn't have done that. But that was a lesson to be learned. And some people have to learn lessons the hard way.
Well, I suppose because you lived there, you knew you were getting scammed. You knew the scam. You knew what was what was happening, and you
I
probably
knew 2 minutes into the journey, I knew what was going on, but the guy wasn't stopping. Like short of throwing myself out the tuk tuk, there was no way to get out of it. But it's never happened before. It's never happened since. It was just a one off. But like I say, he done it on purpose. I explained to him in Khmer. He said he knew where he was going. Wat Lanka is a very popular area. He knew exactly what he was doing.
this is kind of unplanned, but we have kind of similar stories from, things that happened to me. Like, I've never got in major trouble in Thailand, but the only
Mm,
time that something really kind of bad happened to me was similar to you. I got into a taxi. I was with actually another Irish friend, and we were going home, and we were in a taxi, and we know from Sukhumvit back to Ratchada, it's 100 baht.
yeah.
We're in this taxi, and all of a sudden, turn off the meter, and he said, "No, no, it's not 100 baht anymore. It's 350 baht." And I
Yeah.
thought we had a couple of drinks on, and we said, "We're not paying you 350. It's 100 baht. Why are we going to give you 4 times the fare? Like what?" So we were. I was a bit leery, and I don't know what he said, but I ended up getting out of the taxi, and he ended up getting out of the taxi, the taxi driver. And then within 2 minutes, there was a couple of motorcycle taxi drivers around us, and there was a bit
Yeah.
of a scuffle. And in the scuffle, my wallet was stolen.
Oh no.
Yeah, and it didn't work out too bad. The only thing they stole, the only thing he used was he used it at McDonald's. It was actually my Irish ATM card, and I had
Yeah.
just picked it up that night from a friend that come from Ireland with my card.
Uh,
So I lost it. That I was very annoyed at the time. But anyway, the only transaction was a McDonald's transaction for like 500 baht. But that was only testing the card to see if it worked.
see. And
I
then
got,
you
I was able to
shut it
cancel
down.
it fairly sharpish. But yeah, that was the only kind of major incident I had. I learned from that because I remember another time I was in a taxi, and I was kind of starting to argue about the fare, and I could hear it, and he started turning the car on
Yeah.
purpose. But what he was doing is he was letting me know that he had a metal bar in the car, because when he turned the car, you could hear the bar clank.
Oh, I
He's
see.
letting me know, yeah,
A little bit of
I have a bar
psychological
here.
intimidation.
Exactly. I was like, I'm not gonna argue with this guy. I'll pay the extra 100 baht, whatever it is. Yeah, there was one famous story in Bangkok. There was a guy killed about 10 years ago over 60 baht.
Oh my
He
God.
he was an argument over the meter. He insulted the driver. He said something, and he got out and was walking up the street. The driver came from behind with a machete and just boom straight into the back of his neck
Oh Jesus.
over 60 baht. So it's not
Yeah,
worth it.
it's not worth it. Just take the L and walk away, and you live to fight another day.